Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Amy Osborne and I am a program associate for graduate yoga studies at Loyola Marymount University. I actually completed my Master of Arts in Yoga Studies degree at LMU, which is primarily Eastern philosophy and comparative theology, and some of the science, anatomy, and physiology of yoga. And I am also the founder of In Yoga Collective, which is a trauma-informed community where we provide trainings for schools and social workers. I'm really excited to be partnering with Echo LA to bring you two different training offerings: Trauma Conscious Yoga for kids as its own training course, and Trauma Conscious Yoga for adults, or just Trauma Conscious Yoga. So I'll be just briefly touching on both today and giving you a little sneak peek of what those training courses will look like, in hopes that you might be willing to join us in the future. So as part of this, without further ado, I will be sharing my screen with you so we can walk through a bit of a PowerPoint presentation and just talk through some of these topics. So once again, here we are, Trauma Conscious Yoga. I did, as I mentioned, complete my master's with LMU, which is listed here. And for my thesis presentation, after 2 years of study, I actually attended 6 trauma conscious trainings, some for catered to our prison population, juvenile population, homeless, immigrant refugee, all different scope of work and demographics. And what I attempted to do was take best practices from those trainings and then compiled them in my thesis, which is now published, called A Year in Yoga, The Science and Practice of Trauma-Informed Mindfulness. And there's actually a limited number of copies on Amazon. I have a hard time keeping up, which is great. This work is really needed at this time, and you'll soon find out why if you don't know already. So Trauma Conscious Yoga, or Trauma-Informed Mindfulness, works with the body's physiology to re-regulate and build resiliency. So when we endure a lot of stress or traumatic event, that has an impact not only on our physiology, our nervous system, but thereby and through a variety of other systems, it impacts our brain, it impacts every system in the body. So we might have digestive issues, we might develop adrenal issues or endocrine issues, and so these are all symptoms or residual effects of stress and trauma. So I found in my own life that by educating on the physiology, that I became more aware of how to best serve myself and what tools and techniques could help bring me back into self-regulation. And over time, that builds resilience. So then it becomes easier. Our window of tolerance becomes bigger, bigger, bigger. We can handle more because we have these tools and we've built more of a capacity for stress and for traumatic events, which unfortunately are part of life and part of the process of living, often outside of our control. So certainly in this era of COVID-19, we want to be aware of our own mental health. We're seeing the emergence of a mental health crisis in this country, and I think by providing tools and techniques and empowering each individual to take control of their own well-being and self-regulation to the extent that we're able, teaching kids these tools and techniques from a young age, we can begin to heal individually and as a community. So thank you for joining for this presentation, and hopefully you will join for my upcoming training in June and November, and perhaps others. There are 2 training courses I offer. One is specific to kids, the other is more geared towards adults. The primary differences are the methodology, the tools, the techniques. So what I would ask an adult to try on their own or to do for self-regulation, for a kid, that might be similar, but it would be, a little more playful. And so the postures have different names, the breaths have different names for kids, and then there's the adult version. So I am happy to share both versions of this training, and we'll just briefly touch on an overview of it today together. So here we are, Trauma Conscious Yoga for kids or adults. I prefer to do them separately, but once again, there is a lot of overlap, so we'll touch on both. This is me, Amy Osborne. I have my master's in yoga studies, and I do have a 200 and 300 hour curriculum that I designed based on my course of study, which included travel in India and intro yoga therapy coursework. So here we are in Yoga Collective. We're just at the beginning of launching trauma-informed training, serving teachers in schools and social workers in Southwest Florida and in Los Angeles, and I hope to serve others as we move along. So first I want to take an opportunity just to define yoga. If I say yoga, you're probably thinking roll out your mat, put on your spandex leggings, and move your body in funny shapes. And that's part of it. But that's actually just one of the 8 limbs of yoga. That's actually called asana, is the physical postures. And there are 7 other limbs, which include ethical standards for ourselves, as well as how we move in the world with others, as well as pranayama, breath work, asana, and then moving into the 4 stages of meditation. So if you go to India and you talk about yoga, you're actually talking about the path to meditation and to enlightenment, not physical postures. Here in the States, we've come to know yoga as simply asana, physical postures, and so it's important to start to make this distinction. And here, certainly we'll be discussing all of it. And my training does include physical movement. It does include breath work. So you do get that, the familiarity of yoga. And I'll get more into that toward the end. So I wanted to share this definition of yoga that I use in all my trainings. Through my course of study with Loyola Marymount University, we went to India to study Jainism for a summer semester. And we visited primarily ashrams in New Delhi, as well as Hastinapur. And this was the final place we visited in Ladnoon. And I really enjoyed, they provided us with this textbook. I found this in the beginning of the textbook, but I really enjoyed this ashram in particular because it was run by all female nuns, whereas a lot of the other ashrams had been monks and men, which is cool. But these nuns all had, or many of them had, PhDs in neuroscience. So Preksha meditation is the practice of utilizing the profound awareness of neuroscience and neuroplasticity to facilitate a deep meditative and healing process on a cellular level. So this is how they define yoga, and usually I have a student read it, but I will read it for you today. So equanimity is yoga. Serenity is yoga. Skill in action, that's a big one, is yoga. Control of the senses and the mind is yoga. Anything by which the best and the highest in life can be attained by virtue is also yoga. Yoga is thus all-embracing, all-inclusive, and universal in its application, leading to all-around development of body, mind, and soul. And this came from the Preksha meditation textbook. So in talking about yoga through a trauma-informed or trauma-conscious lens, it's important to define the terms that we're working with. So what is residual trauma? How is it that trauma lives in the body? So most of this work, of my work, is based on the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and The Body Keeps the Score, who's a leader, and that is his book in this effort. There are many other great influencers in this work out there, Stephen Porges, Peter Levine, among others, and some more contemporary trauma-informed scholars and educators. So residual trauma is this idea that when something happens in the body, when something happens outside of ourselves, it has an impact on the body. And even though we might not be able to see it, it's not material, this manifests over time, and we start to feel it in different ways in different body systems. That's very individual There's no cookie cutter way that trauma shows up in the body. It can be different for different people. So just in acknowledgement that when something very stressful or traumatic happens, we can be aware that, whoa, there's going to be impacts to this. Let me observe that process and just be aware of it. So an example I like to give, one of my teachers in this work, Hala Corey, told a story long ago in a training that I took with her, where she was driving down the street and something as simple as she accidentally ran over a squirrel. She was rushing, running, life was stressful, she's on the phone, she's doing 1,000 things, and her heart dropped. She felt her muscles tense. What was happening in the body? If you've ever been in a near car accident or, had a similar instance where something just kind of catches you off guard, what's the body doing in reaction? Generally, the muscles contract, the heart rate increases. How is your breathing? Is it slow and deep, or is it a little bit short and shallow? So the body automatically re-regulates in order to support you in surviving that traumatic event. So I've learned that your body does not know the difference between, an almost car accident and getting chased by a tiger or a cheetah. So what happens if a tiger or a cheetah is chasing you? We are built as human beings, as mammals, to have certain instincts. So if there's a tiger behind you, what do you need to do? Are you going to sit down and meditate and take deep breaths? Probably not. You're going to need to run. And what do you need to run? You need your heart to be pumping blood throughout the body. You need quick breaths to bring new oxygen in to support your speed and motion. You need the muscles to contract so that you can run faster. Your pupils dilate so that you can see and perceive more clearly. So these are survival instincts. Do you have to stop and use the restroom? Like, hold on, tiger, I gotta go over here. No, everything contracts and your body, your digestive system slows down because in that moment it's not essential as a survival function. So we see the ways in which our body adjusts in this fight or flight, run away from the tiger state. So understanding that and understanding that the body does not distinguish between missing a deadline at work, getting yelled at by your boss, an almost car accident, or getting chased by a tiger or a cheetah, the symptoms or the residual trauma, what's happening in the body, is the same. So simple trauma would be that idea of an almost car accident, one thing that happened, accidentally hitting a squirrel, and you have to live with that. So my teacher shared that she knew that she would need to release that. She could either go home and later on maybe yell at her kids, yell at her husband, or what she did was when she had a moment, whenever that moment was later in the day, scream into a pillow, shake it out, move your body, release. It needs to be released in some way. I always say scream it out, yell it out, write it out, move it out. I don't care what you do, get it out. So simple trauma. This has happened. I can do this to release it. This is what my body needs. One-to-one correlation. Complex trauma is this idea of compounding trauma. One thing happened, and so the next thing happened, and so the next thing happened, and so the next thing happened. And that can be over a period of years, decades, a lifetime. We see this commonly in the prison system, where people might be admitted into prison for a minor offense, and then over the years they return with heightened offenses. And that's often because they went to prison because they had possession of an illegal substance. While they were in prison, traumatic events or one or more occurred. They return back to society and they're not the same because of the traumatic events, be that just injustice they felt and or physical things that happened to them. So now they're more likely perhaps to be deregulated and to do more and more and more. as their nervous system has become adjusted to the deregulation. That's very common with veterans as well, that they want to go back to war because they don't feel regulated, they don't feel okay in equilibrium when they're not in danger and in those real adrenal moments. They almost feel they need it to feel regulated. So as you can tell, it becomes more complex. This is complex trauma, and this generally unfolds over time. So observational awareness is the idea that, or the practice that we can observe our own process. So this can also be considered a practice of mindfulness, that rather than being in the sensations in my body, I am upset, I am angry, I am sad, anxious, depressed, we can be those things. We also have the option, and yoga and meditation give us the tools to start to step outside and observe the process. I'm noticing that I feel depressed. I'm noticing that I have anxiety and I have, therefore, a stomach ache, or my digestion is off. Allowing yourself to observe and have awareness of what's happening then gives you the power of choice. So now it's, what are my tools? I can go for a walk. I can write in my journal. I can practice yoga asana, or maybe some breaths that I know are helpful for me. I have a meditation practice that I know serves me. Maybe mantra is great for depression specifically. So these are the tools and the techniques we discuss in these trainings that then allow you or provide you the opportunity to have more choice and to choose how you'd like to move forward. So Anekantavada is this really fancy word. You see the Devanagari, the Sanskrit symbology there. And very simply, it means many-sidedness in literal translation. It can also be a theory of relativism. So in the trainings I offer, we talk about this elephant story that comes out of Jain tradition, which is one of the 4 Dharma traditions that contributed to the concept of yoga and yoga as we know it today. So I won't spoil the elephant story for you, but ultimately we see that there are many truths, that people can have experiences in life that are valid, that are their experience, and yet if we strive for the highest truth, we need to see all the sides of that story, because each and every side and angle is valid. But to know the real truth with a capital T, we need to be like up here observing all the different sides. So I look forward to sharing that more with you in the training when you join us. So this is probably the most important thing, although we expand on this in the training in greater depth. I'll touch on it now. This is the physiology. So whether you're working with kids or adults, understanding the nervous system is one of the most important tools, not the only, but one of the most important aspects of understanding trauma and understanding how this practice of observational awareness or mindfulness can guide us to regulation and equilibrium. That's kind of our happy place. You know, we all have moods. We have this like natural flow, a little bit up and down every day, but it's still a good day, right? And there's always going to be that fluctuation. But when trauma or extreme stress occurs, the waves are much bigger, higher, deeper, and they often escalate. And that's where we become deregulated. And our nervous system has a difficult time keeping us in that window of tolerance, in that equilibrium. So I'll show you a visual here. So we'll briefly touch on the physiology, neuroplasticity, and the psychology of stress and trauma. I call this the how and the why it works. Physiology, fancy word. So these are the symptoms of undischarged traumatic stress. As I mentioned, you see the spiking line. First, you see this middle line that's kind of more faint. That's just kind of like this wave in the middle. And you see the dotted lines, top and bottom. And this is kind of our window of tolerance. Like, as long as we're in here, in this in between, we're good. We can handle it. We're good to go. We can get ourselves back to where we want to be. However, as you can see, when a traumatic event occurs, and that's the exclamation point there, we have this spiking that happens. And at the top, the peak of the spike, you can see the symptoms are anxiety, panic, hyperactivity, startle, inability to relax, hypervigilance, digestive problems, chronic pain, sleeplessness, hostility, rage, and we know this as fight or flight. Our sympathetic nervous system is spiked. And what happens after a while? The cheetah is chasing you, your body, your nervous system is sending out the signal, the alarms, go, 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 we have to go, 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 run, 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 contract the muscles, contract the breath, all the things, all the effects here, the symptoms we see. And what happens in some individuals is they get stuck on. And this is an experience of prolonged anxiety. Okay? Often, some people, it's very individual, may stay in that place of just the spike. Very often, we can't maintain that. The body gets fatigued. I can't do this anymore. I've been running from this cheetah forever. So what happens? We spike down. Deep past the parasympathetic, rest and digest where we want to be, it starts to become a stuck on off. And when we experience that low spike or valley, we see the symptoms are depression, flat affect, lethargy, deadness, exhaustion, chronic fatigue, disorientation, disconnection, disassociation, pain, low blood pressure, poor digestion. So some similar symptoms, but also kind of the opposite of what we just saw in the hypervigilance spike. Now we're stuck in hypovigilance. And the body is trying to re-regulate. The nervous system is trying to send signals to find the happy medium again. Often, all of us, most of us, humans, find coping mechanisms. So it might be drugs, alcohol, can be sex, can be violence, can be, whatever it is that allows us to feel we're releasing. And then, we become somewhat dependent on those things in order to feel regulated, because it's an artificial regulation. Yoga, mindfulness, meditation are also methods by which we can bring the body back to the window of tolerance, to this middle area here, and begin to find some regulation without the harmful effects of those other less healthy coping mechanisms. So these are all choices, going out in nature. If you have a hobby, it's great, like surfing, walking, running, biking, hiking, whatever it is that I really believe nature heals in and of itself. And so these are all tools. It's not just yoga. It's understanding the physiology, what's happening in the body, and what works for you, what tools you keep in your toolbox to support you in re-regulation in a healthy way. And that doesn't mean you never have a glass of wine when you're stressed, or it's more about awareness. You have a choice. I could have a glass of wine, I could go for a walk, I could do some yoga, I could do some meditation, I could listen to music. These are my tools. So today, which one do I choose? And understanding in yoga, one of the ethical standards, the yamas, niyamas, is brahmacharya, moderation. So, it's okay to have all of it in moderation. And we know deep down when something is not serving us or is unhealthy, or when it's okay, in moderation to do things. So this is very personal. It's really about empowerment of the individual to determine these considerations for yourself. So rather than giving you the fish, like, here are the fix-all tools, here's the pill you need to take to fix yourself. No. Here's the education, here's the understanding of your own body. What do you choose? What do you choose? And empowering in that way for you to choose your own reactions. And it can be a beautiful experience to start to find choice and to start to develop your own toolbox and toolkit. So whether that's helping kids develop a toolkit at a young age, so that maybe they don't go through some of this compounding of trauma because they have healthy coping and healthy tools for resilience. But for adults as well, we can find healing and we can build ourselves up in a way that feels fully supported, but we're supporting ourselves. And that's really one of my favorite aspects of this work. I don't have to rely on someone else to fix, which isn't what we're doing anyway, right? We're embracing the waves, we're acknowledging the process, and we're ourselves empowered to find our way back to peace and stability. So this is a very human process. We all go through it to different extents. So not blaming yourself for experiencing these spikes, just observational awareness, noticing them, and what are our tools. So we'll talk more about that as we go on. In the trauma conscious yoga training, we will go more in depth into the vagal theory. It is the other very important piece to understand. In addition to the nervous system, there is one key nerve in the body, the vagus nerve, that runs from the brain throughout the body and innervates almost every system in the body. And we find that this nerve is the primary nerve for supplying parasympathetic regulation, so allowing the body to come into rest and digest. Thinking about the physiological or the anatomical process of stress, I mentioned the muscles tense and the body tenses up and contracts. What happens when the muscles contract and there's nerves running all throughout? Any impingement to the nerve would prevent communication from flowing as easily as it should. So because the vagal nerve affects or innervates every system in the body almost, we may see in different body systems effects that are due to prolonged experiences of stress and residual trauma. So this helps us to understand the interconnectedness of our process of stress and trauma and how it shows up in the body. Hence, the body keeps the score. Your issues are in your tissues. And so that's a much more complicated, thing we can dive into, but just this idea that your stress and your experience lives in the body, and that by having awareness of the symptoms as they arise, of things you're noticing, and having some tools to promote rest and digest, parasympathetic nervous system, that we can start to ease the natural flow and hopefully find equilibrium again. Neuroplasticity. So we know now that the more you think a thought, the more you will think that thought. So neuroplasticity teaches us this, that two neurons are connecting in the brain, and that is a thought. So George Harrison, who was big into Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi, would talk about regrooving, the need to regroove. And he said that, we get stuck in these stories, we get stuck in these narratives, and that's like a deep groove in a record. He would, right? The Beatle, talking about his records. So our story is a deep groove in a record. And when we need regrooving, finding a new groove, we've got to pick up the needle on the record player and move it to a new groove. And that's understanding the process of neuroplasticity. That deep groove is a very strong connection of neurons in the brain that was built through thinking the same thought, reinforcement over time, over and over and over again. And so finding within ourselves the strength, but also as a practice, every time I think this old thought, I'm going to move it to the new thought. And this is a practice of observational awareness. In yoga tradition, we see this show up as Vipassana meditation, which is a primarily Buddhist practice, which is another of the four Dharma traditions that have influenced the origins of yoga. So we'll go more in depth down the road, but introducing this idea of neuroplasticity. How does it work? And the fact that we ultimately can control our own thoughts. And that's a really powerful practice, but it is a practice. Most everybody who starts this practice, a couple days in, it's not working. It didn't work for me. I can't do it. whatever, but it's repetition. That's all it is. It's science and repetition. So it's just regrooving, creating that new thought process and strengthening that thought and that narrative to a point where it becomes stronger than the old pattern. So I have much more on the Western psychology and how it supports this school of thought in trauma-conscious yoga and mindfulness. But today I just want to touch on this, which is applies to kids and adults, but really kids here. It's such a simple concept that you can take and use right away. Steve Porges is really a great contributor to this line of study and work. And he has a book, Porges Theory, and he talks a lot about the vagal nerve, or the vagus nerve. But he says here, therapeutic uses of play and rough and tumble behaviors as a means to develop adaptive behaviors, shifting people out of fight or flight reactions into loving, mutually engaged mobilization. Real kind of tricky way to say that play moves us into rest and digest. When you're dancing around the kitchen, or when kids are, playing a game outside, they can't be in fight or flight. Your nervous system, just as you need to be in a rest and digest to sleep comfortably, you need to be in rest and digest to play. And so rough and tumble behaviors in particular, moving your body, is a straight way to begin to re-regulate the nervous system. And this is where asana, the practice of physical postures and movement in yoga, can be very healing. Often we see classically in the 8 limbs of yoga, we're informed to work on our ethics, our purity of how we move in the world and how we work with ourselves, then work with movement and with breath. So meditation comes next. Why? Because in order to sit comfortably and achieve any peace in meditation, we first need to move the body into rest and digest and into a space of regulation. And so movement comes first, and breath as the primary tools. And we see this if you've gotten on your yoga mat and done like a vinyasa flow or a power flow or a really energetic practice, that is releasing that energy that you then need to be able to move into a rest and digest state where you can experience more peace of mind. Techniques and practices, methodology, and customized sadhana for self-regulation. So this is where we dive deeper in the trainings itself. We will do, depending on the time and the structure of each training, we will do a 30-minute to 1 hour asana and pranayama practice. Mindfulness and meditation as well are integrated. And then I also like to share some of the methodology. So if you're going to go and teach these techniques to others, if you're a social worker, a caregiver, a school teacher, then understanding the languaging, and how to set up your space, kind of ground rules, things to consider. So we discuss all of this, not only practicing ourselves and learning the techniques, but also learning kind of the how to best approach the teaching of those techniques. And then finally, pending time in these trainings, I love to do a case study exercise where you actually are assigned an adult or a child of various ages and different physiological symptoms. They might have insomnia, they might have digestive issues, anxiety, depression, and we have you develop a sadhana, which loosely translates to daily practice, the practice that you do regularly for yourself to enable and allow self-regulation. My puppers just entered and might bark here, So this is truly skill in action. This is the practice, and I know this is what a lot of people are excited to do in the trauma-conscious yoga training, but we do go deep into the science as well in order to get to this customization piece where, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Which breath would I do? What type of movement would I do? Okay, I'm feeling depressed, hypovigilant, lethargic. What breaths would I do? What physical movement would I do? And those sometimes are the same, but most often are different. Different techniques and tools will have different effects on the body. So I look forward to guiding you in that process, where you can then, rather than giving you the fish, you are learning to fish. You're able to create and customize sadhanas for yourself and for others based on their physiological needs, which change and evolve. What serves someone this week may be different next week or tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now. So giving you as many tools as possible so that you have the flexibility to move and evolve and to meet the need from a somatic sensibility. So the physiology, the neuro aspect, the psychology, understanding those three elements together. This is skill and action, going back to our definition of yoga. That was the third thing. Equanimity is yoga, serenity is yoga, skill in action is yoga. And so applying the skill of awareness, somatic understanding of the body, and then tools. And so I look forward to guiding you in that process together. So that wraps up my PowerPoint for today. A little bit of a teaser. I do look forward to having the opportunity to go deeper in conversation and in practice with you. I do offer, my favorite type of training is a 6-hour, or if you are really looking for a deep dive, there's a 16-hour weekend version of this training. Through Echo, I'm doing some of the 6-hour and some of the shorter virtual versions. And I look forward to including practice in those trainings, even if they're virtual, with the intent of when you complete this training, you are ready to go. You have tools for yourself. You feel able and ready to serve others. I often call this the toolkit training, because you leave with the toolkit. You leave with something you can use, and really a deeper understanding of the body, of these tools and techniques, and how they can serve you personally, how they can serve people you love, and how they can serve the community. So I am, as I mentioned prior, I am a program associate, which is like an administrator role for the master's program, graduate yoga studies at Loyola Marymount University, and we now have a yoga therapy track or option within that master's program as well, dedicated towards some of this work in healing and trauma-informed approach. And then I do have In Yoga Collective, which is my side organization, which is a team of instructors who have gone through this training, who are dedicated to doing this work, and who want to serve populations all over the country. So currently we have a robust group in Southwest Florida doing this work in inpatient recovery centers, mental health court, nursing homes, on and on, juvenile detention center, prison, jail, and then here in Los Angeles, I've worked previously in county jail, Venice Family Health Clinic, and look forward to continuing to proliferate this work, Department of Children's and Families. There's so much work to do, and I'm feeling in this era of COVID-19, it's no longer these pockets of targeted work. It's really a much broader call to action. And so I look forward to every opportunity to just share this, what I've highlighted today, but in greater depth, and how it served me in my life and really changed my life in many ways, in hopes that it can have that same impact on others. So this was just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to talk about, and I look forward to that opportunity to share with you. So thank you for joining. It was my honor and pleasure to share with you a little bit more about trauma-conscious yoga, and I hope that we'll stay connected in the future. I hope you will check out all of Echo's amazing offerings, because they're doing so much great work around trauma informed approach, and there are so many lenses and ways to approach this work. I'm learning so much by being part of this community, and I just look forward, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share. Let's go ahead and quickly, briefly find a comfortable seat and do a bit of a closing together. So if you're in a chair, you can find yourself to the edge, feet planted to the floor, Knees and feet in alignment, and the hands can rest heavy on the knees or in the lap. In my trainings, I often say spaghetti against the wall. I just threw a lot at you. You're not required to retain it all. Some of it's going to stick, some of it's going to fall off. So finding your comfortable seat and just expressing gratitude to yourself for taking the time to tune in, to learn and be open to something new. Closing the eyes if it's comfortable, or dropping the gaze toward the floor or a space in front of you. Checking in with the space around you, any sounds, sensations, distractions, maybe a noisy neighbor, somebody in the next room over, making some noise. Just name and acknowledge it. Things outside yourself. Just observe. Bring awareness to your body, any sensation in the body, hungry, tired, ache, pain. Just notice, not good or bad. Bring awareness. Finally, bring awareness to the breath, moving in and out through the nose, and just noticing the pace of breath. Is it fast? Is it slow? What areas of the body are expanding with breath? Through the chest, the back body. Perhaps the belly rises as the diaphragm lifts. Maybe yes, maybe no, just noticing. On your next inhale, take a breath in to the count of 3. Just observe the lungs expanding, front and back body like a balloon, 3-dimensionally. The ribcage expands to accommodate the breath. Exhaling to a count of 3. Releasing through the nose. We'll take 2 more that way. Breathing in, a count of 3. Exhale, a count of 3. Inhale, a count of 4. Holding at the top, exhale, a count of 4. Coming to an easy, natural pace of breath. Taking a moment in stillness. Observing any thoughts that arise with curiosity, not good or bad, just noticing them. Acknowledging a thought and allowing it to move away. Returning your focus to the breath, awaiting the next thought as it arises. Slowly, gently bring awareness back into the body. You might wiggle through fingers and toes, roll the shoulders gently forward and back. Waking up the body slowly. When you're ready, the arms can reach all the way up overhead. And exhale, if it serves, hands to heart, or just leaving the hands on the knees. Acknowledging gratitude for yourself, once again, for showing up today and for showing up in future trainings. And I thank you for the honor to guide you. May all beings be happy, healthy, and free. Thank you for sharing in practice. I look forward to seeing you virtually or in person for an echo training in future, and am really honored and humbled by the opportunity to share this work. So Amy Osborne, here with Loyola Marymount University Graduate Yoga Studies and in Yoga Collective. I hope to connect with you in future and wish you and yours well. during this challenging time. Be gentle with yourselves, and see you very soon.